What about if you're told to F off? Yeah, well, who hasn't had a cold call where they've been told to F off? I think there's a few things we should talk about with this. It's not just about how you handle that call, but actually it's also about your own protecting your own well-being, your own attitude. So there's this kind of general concept that there's three things that go into being successful. One is the behaviors that you do, so picking up the phone, sending emails, doing LinkedIn prospecting, stuff like that. There's the technique, which is what goes into a lot of our courses. Technique, the how do you run a meeting, how do you ask a prospect X, Y, and Z, how do you suggest to them that they might have a problem without offending them, protecting their okayness. But the third thing is your attitude, and you can do any two of those three things. It's like a three-legged stool. You can do any two of those three things, but with the third one out, the stool's going to topple over and you're stuffed. So what can happen after you've been told to F off is you can slam the phone down, and you can be a bit aggressive, you can be a bit frustrated, a bit disappointed, you can be annoyed, and you can maybe storm out of the office, but ultimately you stop making calls, right? And you can start to believe that making cold calls doesn't work just because you called one person who told you to F off. Now, you don't know what has happened in that person's life that morning, 2 minutes before that call. They might have had some bad news. They might be in a massive rush. They might be in a really bad mood. Hell, they might have just been told that their job's at risk. And they might just not be in the mood. The thing to remember is it's got nothing to do with you. It's absolutely nothing to do with you. Now, I encourage all the people that I coach and train to record all of their outbound calls, and I do exactly the same thing myself. I actually record myself on my webcam as well, so that I can see my own physical behaviours, because standing up is important. The way smiling has an impact on the call that you make. But by reviewing those calls, if you go into the call with your head down, with the wrong attitude, you don't have a straight back. You're not holding yourself as a professional. You're being subservient in the way that you talk. You're opening the call saying things like, how are you today? Please, can I have some time? Please, can I have 5 minutes to explain why I'm calling? These are lowering your status, and you're in what's known as the kind of child ego state when you do that. And the impact of being in the child ego state is that you're forcing the other person into a critical parent role, where they are going to order you around, and sometimes they are going to be offensive to you and shout at you. So there are some things that you do opening up the call that actually triggers that response. There's more that we can talk about how to open up a cold call properly, but okay, going back to your original question, how do you actually deal with someone who says F off? Well, you're under attack in that moment, all right? And I would just remind you, if I was coaching you, I would remind you that when under attack, fall back and call it, right? Typically it's a guy who's telling me to F off, but if it's a woman, fine too. But call it and say, forgive me. There's something that I've done that's offended you, and I apologise for that. Would you like to bring the call to an end now? Or would it be okay if I just took a couple of minutes to explain why I was getting in touch with you specifically? Yeah. So let's look at what I've done there. So I've fallen back. I've said forgive me. I haven't said sorry. Okay. Sorry is an apologetic child that lowers your status in their eyes. If they are a commanding individual who's a bit of a dictator, they will feel like they've won and they won't respect you at all. So, but forgive me doesn't mean too much, but it's increasing your status. You're not lowering it. Forgive me. It feels like there's something I've done to offend you. Okay. Now, some people will respond to that saying, "No, you haven't offended me." If they're a kind of there's a particular personality trait that can sometimes be tend towards this kind of attitude, which is we describe as a D, a very decisive person. Your typical old school CEO, they won't care about emotion at all, and they'll just say, "No, you haven't offended me. You can't offend me. My emotions aren't available to you to offend." But you've also moved the conversation on. You've said, you've stayed behind. They're in a really negative state. You're staying behind them. I guess the call's over. Should we bring the call to an end? Or would it be okay if I just took a couple of minutes to explain why I was getting in touch, and you're getting yourself back on track there? So that's how I would recommend dealing with it. But I think the most important thing is, look, some will, some won't. So what? Move on. It really, really doesn't matter. Maybe this person's never going to buy from you. Fine. Who cares? There's plenty more fish in the sea. What's actually more important is that you maintain your okayness, your attitude, that you keep yourself at a kind of professional status, and don't drag yourself down into muttering under your breath and swearing, and definitely don't have a fight with the client. Does that answer your question?